Hello everyone, I'm Yazan Ibrahim, or as some of you might know me, Yazan Abu Ghosh. Today we're going to dive into a fascinating and essential topic. Fraud examiners. Section 3, Investigation 3.1. Planning and conducting a fraud examination. Today's deep dive into the world of fraud investigation. Whether you're an aspiring fraud investigator, a business owner, or simply curious about how organizations manage their finances, or if you are auditor, this journey will shed light on the often complex systems that drive decision-making. Fraud examination can be a complex and highly structured process, but when broken down into its core components, it becomes clear how each step is essential in tackling fraud effectively. In this educational video script, we will take a deep dive into the subject, exploring fraud examination from its foundation to its most intricate details. Fraud is like an iceberg. What you see on the surface is often just a fraction of the problem. Beneath the water lies a hidden network of schemes, misrepresentations, and misconduct. Fraud examination is the process of diving beneath the surface and uncovering those hidden layers systematically. This process is unique in that it is both investigative and preventive, focusing on resolving fraud allegations while also strengthening safeguards against future risks. The importance of planning. Imagine a detective embarking on a case without a blueprint. The investigation could spiral into chaos, with evidence overlooked and critical leads missed. This is why planning is the cornerstone of fraud examination. With proper planning, investigators mitigate challenges, ensure thoroughness, and improve the odds of reaching their goals efficiently. Why is planning crucial? First, it ensures that investigators address fraud allegations systematically, leaving no stone unturned. Second, it protects the integrity of the investigation by preventing hasty, ill-considered decisions. When planning is executed well, it doesn't just deliver results, it protects reputations and organizations. Why conduct a fraud examination? You may be wondering, why go to the trouble of planning and conducting a fraud examination at all? The answer lies in the critical objectives it achieves. Uncovering fraudulent actions. At its core, fraud examination seeks to resolve allegations and bring facts to light. Whether it's financial misconduct or suspicious workplace behavior, investigations uncover precisely how, when, and why fraud occurred. Improving anti-fraud controls. Every examination offers lessons. By analyzing weak points in existing systems, organizations can refine policies and fortify their defenses against future misconduct. It's a continuous process of learning, adapting, and growing stronger. Imagine, for example, a business where employees are free to approve high-cost purchases without review. A fraud examination might reveal how this lack of oversight enabled embezzlement. By tightening purchase protocols, the business could prevent similar issues in the future. Fraud examination methodology. How do we dive into a fraud investigation? The process, though intricate, unfolds in logical steps designed to yield results systematically. 1. Understand the allegations. Every investigation begins with predication, a reasonable basis to suspect an instance of fraud. Without this grounding, an investigation risks not only wasting time but exposing the examiner to liability. 2. Plan the investigation. Here's where teams assign roles, set objectives, and prepare resources. It's the map for navigating uncharted waters, ensuring no step is missed. Teams might include experts in forensic accounting, digital forensics, and legal compliance to ensure a comprehensive approach. 3. Gather evidence. Investigators search for records, contracts, emails, and even digital footprints painstakingly, ensuring they maintain a proper chain of custody. Evidence is the keystone of any case, and its careful collection and preservation are non-negotiable. 4. Conduct interviews. Talking to witnesses and suspects is like piecing together a puzzle. Investigators begin with neutral parties, collecting unbiased information before confronting more involved individuals. Interviews often reveal hidden motives or connections that documents alone can't uncover. 5. Analyze the findings. Drawing on analytical tools, investigators scrutinize collected data for anomalies or trends. Are there unexplained financial transactions? Is there a pattern in missing documents? Each piece of evidence becomes part of a larger narrative. 6. Prepare reports. Finally, investigators compile their findings into clear, comprehensive reports. These reports must be unbiased and ready for scrutiny by not just executives but legal authorities if needed. Reports bridge the gap between discovery and resolution, providing insights and actionable recommendations. Tools for fraud detection. While the methods above seem straightforward, detecting fraud can be wildly unpredictable. Organizations often rely on tips and complaints, which, according to the ACFE's data, lead to 43% of discoveries, far surpassing internal audits or management reviews. It's a reminder that encouraging whistleblowing through anonymous reporting tools can be a game changer for an organization. Crafting a fraud response plan. What happens when fraud is suspected? A fraud response plan ensures an organization acts swiftly yet carefully. This plan outlines clear steps, from securing evidence to notifying relevant authorities, minimizing the risk of missteps or compromised investigations. For instance, if an employee is suspected of tampering with records, a predefined protocol might prioritize locking critical systems, preserving digital trails, and securing any physical files to ensure evidence is intact. A case in point: the fraud theory approach. The fraud theory approach is a structured way to hypothesize about fraud. Take, for instance, a case where Linda Reed Collins, a purchasing manager, is accused of partnering with vendors for kickbacks. Investigators begin by crafting a worst-case hypothesis. Linda might be inflating prices to benefit a vendor in exchange for kickbacks. By validating or disproving each element of this hypothesis through evidence, such as contract reviews, witness interviews, or anomalies in Linda's financial records, investigators arrive at the truth. Through this journey into fraud examination, we see how this discipline illuminates hidden injustices, fortifies organizations, and preserves integrity. The steps may be tedious, the process is complex, but the result is worth it: justice, recovery, and stronger systems ready to withstand future challenges. Now we will move to unraveling the complex yet fascinating methodologies and practices used to uncover and address fraudulent behavior. This journey will take us into the meticulously designed framework fraud examiners rely on to ensure investigations are thorough, legally sound, and effective. If you've ever wondered how professionals tackle the daunting task of identifying, investigating, and mitigating fraud, you're in the right place. To begin, let's talk about the key principles at the heart of every fraud examination. Imagine this as the sturdy foundation of a skyscraper. The principles guide and support every step of the fraud examination process. The first principle is acting on predication. Predication is a technical term that simply means there must be a reasonable basis for launching an investigation. This principle ensures that fraud examiners are not chasing baseless suspicions, but are instead focused on legitimate leads supported by evidence or circumstances. Next, we encounter the principle of assuming litigation. Every step taken during a fraud investigation should be conducted with the assumption that the findings may end up in court. Why? Because documentation and evidence must be not only accurate but also admissible under legal scrutiny. This principle effectively transforms investigators into meticulous documentarians, ensuring every piece of evidence is handled as if it may face the rigorous examination of a courtroom. Now let's delve into the fraud theory approach. This method is essentially the blueprint for how fraud examiners form and test hypotheses about the fraud that may have occurred. It begins with creating an educated guess, a hypothesis, about the who, what, why, and how of the fraud. Then, through a process of investigation and adjustment, this hypothesis is refined and transformed into actionable knowledge. It's like being a detective, piecing together a complex puzzle where every new clue reshapes the picture. However, fraud investigations don't rely on just one perspective. They are multidimensional. This brings us to the two-perspective approach. Imagine a magnifying glass being flipped back and forth between a document and a person. Fraud examiners consider both documentary evidence, like financial records, and behavioral evidence, such as sudden changes in an employee's actions or attitude. By combining these two perspectives, they can uncover a fuller truth, allowing both direct and indirect evidence to guide their work. Lastly, the sequence of an investigation is crucial. Think of it like zooming in on a map. Investigations start broad, examining the landscape to identify possible fraud. Then, as evidence dictates, the focus narrows, zeroing in where the leads are strongest. These foundational principles are mandatory for any fraud professional to approach their work with precision, consistency, and professionalism. Now that we've established the groundwork, let's move into the structured process of fraud examination and the steps involved. The very first is to develop a fraud response plan. This is akin to having a fire escape plan in place. It ensures that everyone knows their role and the necessary actions to take when fraud is suspected. This plan outlines key responsibilities, emphasizes the need to immediately contain potential risks, and serves as a guidepost for an organized response. When suspicions arise, what happens next? The examiner begins planning and conducting the investigation. This phase is all about setting a clear scope and objectives. For example, suppose a company suspects financial fraud. In that case, investigators would first establish criteria for evidence collection, perhaps focusing on bank statements, expense reports, or interviews with employees, and would map out a step-by-step plan for how the investigation unfolds. Evidence collection is essential and serves as the backbone of a fraud investigation. This involves gathering three primary types of evidence: physical evidence like assets or documents, testimonial evidence from interviews or witness statements, and digital evidence like emails or electronic files. Properly maintaining the chain of custody, a process tracking every person who touches a piece of evidence, is also critical to ensure its integrity in legal proceedings. Picture this as a relay race where the baton is passed with utmost care to avoid dropping it. Another key element in investigations is tracing illicit transactions. Imagine trying to follow a money trail that's deliberately been designed to disappear. It's here that expertise in techniques like bank reconciliations and forensic accounting comes into play, providing investigators the tools they need to uncover where the money went and who benefited. Once findings begin to coalesce, they are ultimately compiled into a final report. These reports must be crystal clear, systematically presenting the investigation process, the evidence, and ultimately the conclusions. Think of this as weaving a story from threads of truth, ensuring the narrative is both compelling and fact-based. But investigations are rarely linear. Fraud examiners often revisit their initial theories as new evidence emerges. This iterative process is fundamental to verifying and sharpening findings. For instance, as investigators gather evidence, they might revise their timeline of events, identify a new suspect, or adjust their hypothesis about how the fraud was executed. Additionally, creating visual aids, like charts or diagrams linking individuals to actions, can provide clarity and reinforce findings in a way words alone can't. Another aspect rarely highlighted but critical during investigations is preparing for defense strategies. Experienced fraud examiners understand that suspects may present counterarguments, deny allegations, or point to gaps in the evidence. Addressing these potential defenses proactively ensures the investigation remains robust and credible. Consider this akin to building a watertight ship, leaving no room for leaks or weaknesses. Beyond technical processes, fraud examination dives into human complexities, how behavior, motives, and opportunities align to create fraud. Behavioral evidence is particularly fascinating. For example, an employee abruptly taking on extra tasks they weren't assigned or showing signs of financial distress can be subtle but telling indicators. These behavioral cues often complement the documentary evidence, creating a complete picture. Finally, as our journey nears its end, consider the immense collaboration involved. Fraud investigations are a team effort, often requiring expertise across various disciplines: legal counsel for regulatory guidance, digital forensic specialists for navigating electronic evidence, and accounting experts to analyze financials. Each team member plays a vital role, much like instruments in an orchestra, harmonizing their skills for a unified outcome. Fraud examination is as much art as it is science. It requires a mix of careful methodology, critical thinking, and the adaptability to navigate unexpected twists. Whether it's following trails of missing funds or piecing together patterns of behavior, the work of fraud examiners safeguards trust and integrity in our systems, ensuring that those who commit wrongdoing are held accountable. And with that, we conclude our exploration into fraud investigation principles and processes. Thank you for joining us in this in-depth journey into the world of fraud examination. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and remember, the fight against fraud is one of persistence, precision, and passion. Until next time, stay curious and committed to uncovering the truth. Thank you for watching, and as always, continue learning. Stay curious, and we'll see you next video.